Welcome back to this session that we're doing today as we talk about the triple X factor, and we're going to talk about a brand new law today. Let me just show you. We're here on the second X, as you can see on the screen, and we have covered the law. I think we started off here with the law of income, and then we talked about the law of conversion, then we talked about the law of risk, and then we ended with the law of leverage in this last session that you see, and the law of acceleration. And today we're going to pick up with a brand new law, and it's called the law of compounding. Now, just remember, as we talk about what we call the triple X factor, we have taught extensively now on the first X. And today in this session, we'll cover the last law that is on what we call the second X. And then even though I have one law over here on the third X, we're going to cover a couple of laws here on the third X that we're going to share with you. You just see it on this particular slide, but I want you to see this. And so today we're going to talk about a very unique law. It's called the law of compounding. And all of these laws that we have listed there at the second X, those are the things that it's important that you understand and know how to apply both in your thinking and in the actions that you take in order to be able to build wealth. So when we really talk about the law of compounding, what we're talking about is the time value of money. And this is really important when we start talking about the time value of money, because first of all, the most important part that you begin to understand is that compounding effect of the time value of money causes money or value to be able to grow and increase. So here's a slide that kind of gives us both sides of what we call the time value of money. And what most people, including you that are watching, what most of you would understand easily and relate to is what we would call the present value of money, what money's worth now, right? $10 in your hand today, right now is worth $10. But then the effect of that $10 moving forward, if you add an interest rate to that $10, then that $10 would earn money over time. And if we went from $10, say, to $100. So and we're going to show that to you in a couple of graphs, but let's just say we were going to earn 5% interest, we call that compounding. And depending on the time frame that you have here on this line, so for example, if you had 5%, you were going to make on, say, $100 over 5 years, that would end up being a certain amount of money by the time that 5 years was over. So if you were going to make, say, 5% and you were going to carry it over 5 years, then in 5 years, that $100 would have grown. And today we're going to actually use, for example, what we call the time value money compounding moving forward. And we're going to use $1,000 and we're going to use 5% just to help you understand this law of compounding. And so in year one, if we invested $1,000 and we earned 5% at the end of year one, we would have made $50. So we would have made interest, right? We'd have been paid interest on that $1,000. Now, the good news is, because we earned $50 right here on that $1,000 at the end of the year, we now, going into year two, we now have $1,050 that we have invested. This is called the law of compounding. And that $1,050, again, will earn 5%. And now, at the end of that year, we would have earned not $50, but $52.50. And then we apply that down here as we start year three. And then in year three, we now have $1,102.50 that we invest again at 5%. And we are able then to add this $55.13 at the end of the total. And that'll bring us up to about 1,150, what is that? 150 I think it is, dollars that we would actually have. And so our earnings over that 3 years would be $157.63. Now, here's what that means. We have the $1,000 that we invested, but now we also have more than the 1,000 because the money compounded at 5%. So now we have $157.63 that we put with that $1,000. So that's what we have is that it's $1,157.63. So when you see that, you understand that money at an interest rate will compound over a period of time. Now, in a few minutes, I'll show you this a little more in a little more detail. In fact, let me just pop this up to kind of help you again look at an example of this compounding. And so if we were going to use it, for example, in the area of real estate, and we were going to say, for example, in real estate, that you were going to buy $100,000 property in year one, and that $100,000 property made 5%. Remember, we were using 5%. Then you would have made, for example, in appreciation, you would have made $5,000. So we're saying that the piece of real estate that you purchased actually went up in value. And that works exactly the same way that interest does. So when you earn interest on your money, it makes your money go up in value. When you buy an asset that appreciates in value, then, of course, you earn interest or you earn an income off of that appreciation. So, for example, here, if I was going to have a $100,000 house, my appreciation would be $5,000 a year, but I also have, when I'm making my payments, it's called an amortization schedule. Again, we can cover that in more detail, but an amortization schedule is, for example, is like a normal mortgage on a house would be for 30 years. And then if you look at that amortization schedule and you look at your first monthly payment that's due, it's a whole lot of interest and a little bit of principal. But over a period of time, for example, in year one, your interest buy down on that house, your equity buy down, meaning how much you paid off in principal, would only be about $800 because in the first years of a mortgage, most of the money and interest is paid in those first 10 years. A lot of that, the far majority of it, is paid in those first 10 to 12 years. And so even though it's 30 years, it's not evenly divided. And the reason we're showing that to you is because this $100,000 property would only have an equity buy down of $800, which means now you actually have equity that year, the appreciation or the compounding that you earned on your asset, plus how much you paid off on your principal. Now you've got equity of about $5,800. But let's just say you bought one property per year valued at $100,000 for 10 years. At the end of 10 years, you would have bought 10 properties worth $1 million if you were to buy 10 of them at $100,000 over 10 years. But you get appreciation. Again, this shows you compounding. It shows you how the value of an asset goes up. You get appreciation, and in that appreciation, you would have made, through this course of time of 10 years, about $320,000, about $321,000 that you would have made. That it would have compounded. In other words, just on the asset you own, you would have earned that much in value that's coming back to you. Plus, because you're paying off some of the principal of these homes over a 10-year period, you would end up with about $59,000, almost $60,000 in equity buy down. You'll have a total that you now have created in net worth or in value of $379,000. Now I have another one that's identical to this, but if you were not just to buy one property, but 3 properties a year, we're down here where we have $379,000 with this appreciation. At the end of 10 years, you would be well over $1 million in net worth. That's called compounding because now you control. Here, for example, at the end of 10 years, you would control or own 10 houses. But if we were to buy 3 a year over 10 years, that's 30 homes. So that at the end of the 10 years, you now own 30 homes and your net worth has increased from, for example, with 10, here we have about 370, almost 380,000. But at the end of 10 years with those 30 houses, you'll be well over $1 million that you'll have because of the law of compounding with real estate going up. Now, real estate historically has appreciated at 6% per year annually. Now, it doesn't mean it goes up every single year, 6%. It just means that one year it may go up 2%, and another year it may go up 22%, and another year it may go down 2%, but another year it may go up as high. I've had years that I've owned real estate where it has gone up as much as 60% in one year. As a matter of fact, as I'm recording this, in many markets in the country, we easily saw appreciation rates in one year of 20 to 25% that we saw just in one year. And so the reason I'm showing you this, over time, that adds up, and it shows the time value of money, that money will increase or compound invested correctly. It will increase or compound over a period of time. Now, there's a rule that I like to give here when we talk about this, and it's called the rule of 72. And this will help you understand the compounding effect. The rule of 72, and I have it right here. You can see it on the screen. Let's just read it for a second. It says you divide any number into 72. Any number, pick a number. Doesn't matter, any number. In fact, just to keep it simple, let's just say pick any number between 1 and 100. Any number between 1 and 100, and you divide that number into 72. The answer that happens when you divide that number into 72, the answer is it takes that many years for your money to double at a specific interest rate. Now, I have a little slide here that'll help you with this so you understand it. So I'll just walk you through this slowly. So let's just say that I'm going to get an interest rate on my money. Let's go back. We were using earlier the $1,000. So let's say that I'm going to get an interest rate of 3%, and I've invested $1,000. So now I have $1,000 I've invested. I'm earning an interest rate of 3%. I take that interest rate and I divide it into 72. So I take 72 and divide it by 3. The answer is 24. And that answer of 24 is telling me how many years it's going to take for that $1,000 to double in value, go from $1,000 to $2,000. How long would it take at 3% interest? And the answer is it would take 24 years. So I have $1,000, I'm earning 3%. I take that 3, divide it into 72. The answer is 24. So it takes 24 years for my $1,000 to double in value, right, at 3% interest rate. However, if I jump down here to 6%, look at this. Now I'm earning 6%, let's say, on my money, and I have $1,000 right here. And so I invest $1,000, I'm earning 6%. So I take that 6% and divide it into 72. The answer is 12. And so that's how many years that $1,000 will take to double at 6% interest. It takes 12 years if you're making 6% interest annually on your money. Now, let's reverse that. If you invest $1,000 at 12%, wow, it's getting better, isn't it? And you're investing $1,000, you're able to make 12% a year. I mean, look at this. And you divide that 12 into 72. Now it only takes 6 years. You see the answer here, for my money to double. So if I'm investing money at 12%, it only takes 6 years for my money to double. And then if we go back with the number that it took 24 years, let's say we're making 24% on our money, $1,000, 24%. If I make 24% of my money, wow, how quick will it double? Will I pull that together? I divide 24 into 72. The answer is 3. So it only takes 3 years for my money to double. And so that's an amazing number. So when you start understanding what we call the rule or the law of 72, the rule of 72 is that you just take any interest rate that you're making on your money, you divide that into 72, and it'll show you how many years it takes for it to double. Now, you can reverse that. So instead of taking the number or the interest rate that's on the money over here, the interest rate that's on the 1,000, instead of taking the interest rate, you can take the interest rate out and you can say, hey, I want my money to double in 6 years. Okay, I got $1,000. I'm looking for an investment. I want my $1,000 to double in 6 years, right? So then you take, I want it 6 years. You take 6, you divide it into 72. It tells you 12. So it's telling you that you need 12% annual earning on your interest rate in order for the $1,000 to double in that 6 years time that you want to see. So you can take either the interest rate or the yearly number that you want it to double, and it will. The rule of 72 will tell you that. Now this is a simple rule that you find just in finance and in talking about the value of money. Now, one of the things that I learned several years ago when we're talking about the value of money is how inflation actually affects your money. So what happens if we're talking about this rule of 72. So what would happen in this law of compounding, what would happen is that if you take, let's say you have, we've been talking about $1,000. So let's say that you actually have 10 $100 bills that make up 1,000. So I got 10 $100 bills. I'm still working with this $1,000. And I take those 10 $100 bills and I put them under my mattress. Okay. I just say, look, I don't believe the banks are safe. I'm not going to invest the money. I'm going to try to play it safe, and I'm going to put it under my mattress. Well, if you put that $1,000 under your mattress, here's what happens. After a year's time, which we've been using the 1 year as an example, if I take the $1,000 and I put it under my mattress, right? I'm not investing it at an interest rate to earn. I put it in my mattress. And then I have inflation over here that's 7%, which is, I'm recording this, that's where we've been. And then if I have inflation, then what it does is it takes 7% that year away from the $100 I put under my mattress, because it makes the value of your money worth less because the cost of goods and services are going up. So just to keep it simple, it really means that in fact, let me say this about inflation and about money and the time value of money. And this is important to know. It's not that prices went up. It's that the value of the money you stuck under the mattress went down. And you say, well, how does that work? Because inflation causes these prices to go up. And so now, instead of having to buy the same thing, for example, at 7%, it actually costs you more money now to be able to buy the same thing. But if you just keep it under the mattress, it really means that your money goes down by 7%. So this is what I tell people that put money at the time that we're recording this, you could make 2% on a CD. Well, if inflation is 7% and you're making 2% at the bank on your CDs, well, there's a 5% difference. So what's happening is you're not making 2%, you're actually losing 5%. Now, the time value of money is a little bit more difficult for people generally to understand. But if you can just understand that inflation, as I'm teaching this on the time value of money, eats away at the value of your money. Several years ago, and I put up here the time value of money, and I put here the buying power of $1 over time from 1920 to 2020. Now, look, it's not that the cost of goods and services went up in price. That's what it feels like. But the truth is because we've gone off of the gold standard and the silver standard, the value of the greenback or of the dollar has actually gone down because it's no longer backed up by what we would call a hard asset. It's no longer backed up by something like gold or silver. In fact, it's a note. It literally, your dollar is a note or the currency of your nation that you're in. The majority of you even watching this from other parts of the world, the majority of all currencies in the world today are what we call fiat currencies. It just simply means that when you put that dollar bill in your pocket, it is actually a note. And it's a note that the U.S. government is telling you they'll pay you $1 for that piece of paper. So it's no different than like if I had a promissory note. It's a promissory note that the strength and the faithfulness of the U.S. government will actually give me $1 worth of goods and services, right, for that note. But what's happened is the dollar itself has decreased in value. And I'll give you an example of this because time value of money is a little bit more challenging. But if you look from 1920, and of course you see how the buying power of the dollar went up right through the Great Depression and even after. And then we see it coming down to where we're down here today. And the buying, what we call the way money is diminished, down to it's 2 cents on the dollar what it was worth. If we go back here right at the height of right before the Great Depression started, you can see the value of the dollar was backed up. Today it's not. And so the best illustration I know to help you with this is several years ago, one of my mentors, his name was John, and he said to me, he got up, he was sitting in his chair, and he said, I'm going to talk to you about the time value of money, or he said the value of money. I said, okay. So he gets up and he goes over to the pantry, lived in a beautiful home. He gets up, he goes over to the pantry and he pulls out a loaf of bread. If I remember, honestly, I think it was rainbow bread, if I can remember right. It's a loaf of white rainbow bread. He put it out right there on his kitchen counter. And he said, you see that bread? He said, because he owned some grocery stores. And he said, now, if you come into my store and you have this big loaf of rainbow bread, he said, and you come to the counter and you ask me to pay for, or I ask you to pay for the bread at my store, he said, you're going to give me $1. And he pulls out a dollar bill. And he said, I'm going to take that dollar bill from you and here you get the bread. Well, that's simple. I've done it many times. But then he did something I'd never seen. He reached in his pocket and he pulled out a dime, 10 cents, except it was a silver dime. And he said, but if you come into my store and you want to buy that loaf of bread with this silver dime, not just a dime, but a dime that was actually all the metal in the dime was actually silver. He said, if you come in here, the value of the silver in that dime today, as he was showing it to me, was $1. And he said, if you come in here and want to buy that loaf of bread, then I will take that silver dime for the loaf of bread because it's worth the loaf of bread. And he said, your problem is you think bread went up in price. Bread did not go up in price. What happened was the value of money went down, as I'm showing you right here on this graph. And now it takes many more dollars, for example, to buy something that would have cost the same back in the days when the dollar was actually backed up, for example, by gold and silver. Even when it was backed up by gold and silver, it came down. But what had happened was once we went off any kind of standard for security and we went to a fiat currency, what happens is that the dollar has continued to be devalued in response or in relationship to how it was in earlier times. And so when he gave me the dime illustration, it helped me get a picture that the metal in the dime was worth the bread. And he, as a store owner, knew that, and he would take that for it. And that's the reason you hear people today talk about gold and silver. And so today I've talked about the time value of money in response to compounding and moving forward. So this will help you know that if you want to invest and get ahead, the reason that we talk so strongly about the second X and the reason that we emphasize what we do, that the second X is about buying assets that appreciate in value over time, but also that pay you income, is because the value of the asset never decreases, right? Relatively speaking to history and time, it goes up, and what it pays you in time goes up, just like rent from a piece of real estate will always go up. The only time that rent from real estate doesn't go up is when, and goes down, is in true deflationary times, which we've had hardly any of those periods of any significance. You have to go back to the Great Depression, and even through the Great Recession, even rents ticked up on real estate just simply because everybody needs a place to live. It has to be something of a true deflationary period for many of those assets that pay income, for that income to go down. And so that's obviously the reason I'm sharing that with you, is assets bought properly over a period of time not only always go up in value long term and short term for the majority of the time, but also the income that comes off of those assets will also increase over time. The law of compounding is the last law we're teaching you on the second X to know how to grow those green dots, and you can reach the level of financial independence and financial freedom by acquiring those assets that increase in value and put money in your pocket over time so you can be financially free. Hey, thanks for watching this session, and I'll see you right back here in another one.